Welcome to the Awaken Heart Podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Walters. Get ready to create magic and miracles as you lean into your heart's desires. I believe not only does the heart want what it wants, but it knows. This show is a weekly deep dive into what it means to live from an awakened heart. I'll be sharing inspiring stories and real conversations with people just like you, who have turned the ordinary into the extraordinary. My mission is to show you how you too can be connected and heart-centered in every area of your life. Your journey to aligning with more love, more joy, and your wildest dreams come true starts now. Welcome back to the Awaken Heart Podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Walters. It's so good to be back here with you. I know it's been a minute. And I know you're going to really get a lot out of my next guest, who really is bringing an issue that affects so many men and in turn affecting so many women. And it's something that's not really talked about that much because there can be a lot of shame and embarrassment. And, men don't typically talk like us women. When we have an issue, if something's going wrong with our bodies, we talk to each other in infinite detail. I find that men most likely aren't going to talk about these things. And that's why our today's guest, Brooke Hazen, is bringing erectile dysfunction into the forefront because it is affecting over 30 million men. And it creates low self-esteem, depression, and distress for the man and his partner. And what's causing a lot of this is pornography. Now, I always knew men looked at pornography. I knew it was a problem, but I never really understood how bad it was and really understood what it was neurologically doing and physically doing to a man that I really understood now. And that's what's great about these podcasts is I'm always awakening my own heart. I'm always learning about new things. And I feel this is a very important topic and epidemic, actually, that is happening in our world today, especially here in the United States, where porn is so readily available. It's everywhere. And since we have internet, it's getting worse. And that is leading to a lot of, there's other erectile dysfunctions where maybe you have some kind of circulatory problem. And of course, Brooke is going to go into that more in the podcast, but a lot of it has to do with neurological. And seeing these virtual images are ruining sex for their live partners. And it's really affecting a lot of men and in turn affecting so many women. And some women too are addicted to porn. There's I believe it's 80% of men are addicted to porn and 26% of women. So what is the solution for this? Instead of just popping pills, that is like a Band-Aid over something that might not actually be the root cause. How do we support our partners in getting out of this addictive chaos and to be fully functioning partners? And as we know that pharmaceutical drugs can cause the user to become dependent on short-term fixes, which the makers admit often leads to reduced, inevitably failing sexual performance. And it can wreak havoc on a person's confidence in their relationships. And whole body approach, Brooke Hazen truly believes, and he has found through his own experience, is what can help and how it can help you if you are going through this problem or know of somebody that is dealing with sexual dysfunction or erectile dysfunction. Today's guest, Brooke Hazen, authored a book, You Are Not Broken, a holistic guide for men and women to heal the pathways of sexual dysfunction and restore relational harmony together. It's a companion guidebook for anyone who struggles with sexual dysfunction and is frustrated by the lack of solutions and outright judgment that Western medicine provides. Brooke himself never had any reason to question his sexual performance until his late 40s, when he began to notice that live sexual partners weren't enough to arouse him anymore, and that watching pornography was the only way he could consistently achieve an erection. This realization began a dark period of experimentation with every known ED drug he could find, even going so far as to develop his own blend based on a popular but questionable European drug. But all of that came to debilitating side effects. Faced with the prospect of being unable to have fulfilling sexual encounters ever again, Brooke fell into a deep depression, which only broke when he finally discovered a holistic approach to resolving his issues. Because of Brooke's own struggles with sexual performance and the exhaustive experiential research he undertook to address it, Brooke is able to talk about how he finally began the healing journey and how you can do the same. So this is a really, I believe, an important listen. And because there's so much information, I broke it up into 2 separate podcasts so you can absorb one section before going on to the next one. In this episode, you're going to hear the particular healing modalities that Brooke has found in treating sexual dysfunction, why Western medicine falls short of addressing and treating the root causes of sexual issues, and why healing methods need to address the physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects of sexual dysfunction in order to resolve it. Brooke also demystifies ED in 3 easy steps. So without further ado, here is today's guest, Brooke Hazen. Hey, Brooke, welcome to the Awakened Heart podcast. Good to have you on.
Thank you, Nancy. Great to be on.
Where are you in Northern California, right?
Yes,
right
I'm
now?
in Sebastopol. It's a Russian name, Sebastopol, California.
How far outside of like San Francisco? Are you above San Francisco or way north?
Yeah, I'm above. I'm an hour above San Francisco. Yeah.
It sounds nice. And you've got your own farm and
yeah, I do. Yeah. I built it with my hands since I got out of college.
It's amazing. Yeah, I think it's wonderful growing all your own food right now, especially the way everything's going as far as food and, to raise your own stuff. I just actually got my own seeds recently just to keep non-GMO seeds in case it's needed down the road. It's in a little package. But we came on here to talk about, you just came out with a new book, You Are Not Broken, and you're addressing a big problem that's affecting many men, like 30 million men. It's something that a lot of men don't really talk about. And it's like debilitating because do they talk amongst each other? Do you men talk about it? Like women, if we have some kind of feminine issue or problem, we talk about it. Like,
my guess is no. And corporate control really makes it where men are so petrified in fear that they're really not in a position to talk about it. And there's really no need for that. There's solutions for it that are simple and easy and many free. Yeah. So, but I don't think they talk about it enough. We really should, because a lot of people think that we shouldn't talk about sex, that, even God isn't connected to sex, but God absolutely wants us to talk about sex and to realize the consequences of our choices. This impacts all areas of our life. Sex is life. It's all interconnected. And so we should be talking about it openly and in a relationship too.
Yeah, because it's the creative, like it's creation. You can choose not to create by like protecting yourself. So you're not, creating a child, but it's that bonding between men and women. And when it's like, when you're really in alignment or in your love, it's such a beautiful act. And it's something that, it's been cheapened throughout the years. And as we had discussed before we went live, it's on purpose, a lot of it. So, what led you, like, tell us your story. How did you begin to find these other modalities to help you with this?
Well, yeah, before I get into my story, I just want to talk directly to you and your listeners and explain that the book I wrote is absolutely equally for men and women. I wrote it in that way, and I even have chapters devoted to women. And the healing modalities in my book are women greatly benefit from equally also. So I strongly encourage women to realize this is all available. I wrote this for you also. I do tend to talk a little bit more about men in the podcast and about semen retention. And that's just because there's such an enormous dysfunction with men right now because of their sexual behavioral choices, but women are not experiencing that sort of dysfunction. And because there are certain differences, with semen retention and with the enormous impact that semen release, that liquid gold has on men, on their neurology in their body and their mental state, emotional state. And actually later we could talk about how I don't believe at all that women have the same effects with orgasm. I think that orgasm can deepen the relationship when it's in a healthy relationship with bonding behaviors, and men are refraining from pornography and practicing semen retention. Mm-hmm. But it's really, the reason I talk so much about men is because the statistics is that 80% of men globally watch pornography at least once a week. And we know that it's more than that because it's an escalating addiction, which I'll be getting into, and 26% of women. So this truly is, that means that out of 80 million out of 100 million men, if we just take that sample there, are watching pornography once a week or more and engaging in that, in an escalating addiction we're not recognizing as an addiction. That means this is an epidemic. This is truly the epidemic nobody talks about, the elephant in the room. Nobody's wanting to talk about that impacts our lives so dramatically. And, this is causing men to not be able to open their heart, awaken their heart, and to allow God's light into their heart. And so I want to deep dive today into what exactly is going on with men. Where are they and what's happening to them? Mm-hmm. And how are they not available in relationship? How can we get them to awaken their heart and to be in relationship, or how women can traverse this epidemic and know how they can either an existing relationship or renewing an existing relationship or starting a new relationship, what tools they can have to look for and to strongly request in their relationship. But my story started, if you want me to just hop into that from here, I don't know do you want me to jump into that?
Yeah, no, that's a perfect segue.
Okay. So my journey started several years ago. It was the most unexpected, unbelievable, and beautiful journey that started out as a nightmare when I first started noticing the symptoms of erectile dysfunction. And I do not like using the term erectile dysfunction because it creates a sense of disempowerment and fear around it when nothing could be further from the truth. We are fully empowered and there's nothing to be afraid of. It's Western medicine and the pharmaceutical industry that lock us in this archaic state with their draconian measures. And it's Western medicine, the pharmaceutical, the pornographic, and the insurance industries, corporations are the richest on earth. Mm. And they profit off of our diseases, our dysfunctions, our imbalances, and our addictions. In fact, it doesn't profit them in any way to provide real solutions. So they avoid that because that'll make them go out of business and lose their billions of dollars they make. But I actually have discovered, through the grace of God, I provide, holistic, curative, and preventative solutions that are simple and easy for all three major forms of ED that I've identified. But at the time, and there really is no place for ED today. I want to be so bold to say that there is no place for ED today. There's no place for cardiovascular disease. Again, this is the injustice that's taking place from Western medicine and the pharmaceutical industry, I have to say.
It's a medical cartel.
Yes, it is. We need to awaken to that so we can look out for ourselves. But at the time when I was experiencing this, I was disempowered and I was terrified. And I reached out to Western medicine and they gave me what the only tool is they have for erectile dysfunction, which is pharmaceutical ED drugs that target the cardiovascular function of our blood vessels and our endothelial layer, and it jumpstarts nitric oxide production beyond what we're capable of producing from within. This causes inducing blood flow to all parts of our body because our body is interlinked. It's inseparable. So this, not just the lingam, but the heart, the brain, the muscles, and this is what causes such debilitating side effects. I later found out I had porn-induced erectile dysfunction, the fastest growing segment of ED we see today, a predominant form of ED. So I was essentially being misdiagnosed and misprescribed, along with millions of men right now, with the incorrect drug, blood flow inducing drug, when I didn't have any blood flow issues, because that's the only solution or not even a solution, the only tool they have. So I was actually carrying such enormous burdens at once. And millions of men are carrying these burdens right now, which is why I wrote this book. I want to help alleviate their suffering, because there is a way out that's simple and easy, and a lot of it free. So what I was experiencing were several burdens at once. I was experiencing the scarlet letter of erectile dysfunction, which is with its humiliation, and the overlapping dopamine crashes from my addiction to pornography, with the mood imbalance, fatigue, and distancing in the relationship that causes. And then also this added burden of pharmaceutical ED drugs with their debilitating side effects, and the exacting and mechanical nature of it, and the diminishing and eventually failing effects of it. And during this time, I was going through so much. I was deeply praying to God. I've always been very spiritual, and especially during such trying times, I was leaning so hard into God for support. And I was praying for either a pharmaceutical or even a natural drug which worked and didn't cause side effects. It wasn't a very high bar I was searching for. And of course, my prayers were never answered, and I'm happy they weren't, because God had so much more in store for me than just settling for a lifetime prescription of pharmaceutical ED drugs with no plan to regain a natural, healthy, vibrant sexual function ever again. So I was going through these cycles of depression for weeks at a time. It was really scary for me, because I didn't know if or when I'd pull out of these cycles of depression. And when the last drug failed, didn't resonate with me, was not working for me, I came to the end of the road. And if you can imagine, back then, a few years ago, I didn't know what I knew now. I didn't have the empowerment. I didn't have the tools, the knowledge that I have now. I was all on my own with no plan. It was just myself and God. That was it. And so I prayed deeply to God and let go 100%, everything, into God's arms, and prayed for a healing miracle over and over. And it was at this time that God decided I was ready and led me on this journey of natural healing, growth, learning, and massive transformation, not only of my sexual health to levels I could have never dreamt of, but my overall physical health, my relational, my mental and emotional health, and showed me how this is all deeply intertwined and interconnected and can never be separated, unlike what Western medicine wants us to believe. Mm-hmm. This letting go is essential to what I talk about in my book and today. Letting go of our fears, letting go of the myths and misconceptions, the addictions and negative habits, and the peer pressure that comes from friends, family, society, and especially corporations. By simply letting go of our addiction to pornography and semen release, we allow God's light, healing light, to enter once again into our hearts, body, soul, and for the innate intelligence in every cell of our body to fulfill its mandate, which is to restore perfect balance and health. The miracle that God led me to was Your Brain on Porn by Gary Wilson, which forever transformed my life. And now I understand deeply and profoundly why God led me to this, why this is where God led me, for the miracle that transformed my life. Because God wanted me to profoundly understand, and everyone else, the enormous power that our sexual behavioral choices have to either create massive dysfunction or massive transformation that's positive in all aspects of our life. When we look at our neurology, we don't talk enough about neurology. Regaining a healthy neurology, which is dopamine and our chi sexual energy, is the foundation, the launching pad for transformation in our lives. It unlocks the unlimited potential of our mind. Dopamine is our determination, our will, our drive, our motivation to become the ideal beings we're truly meant to be. And chi sexual energy is our life force. It's both our sexual and our physical energy. It's what creates new life, and it's what creates our own life. When we harness these, we can create massive transformation in our lives, which we're unaware of. We talk about biohacks so much today, and to be sure, my book is full of, it's one giant biohack. It's biohack after biohack in my book that are amazing. Some of them you never heard of, like donating blood, and on and on and on through my book. But we usually focus on like superfoods and, plants and stuff like that. But we don't realize that. And I want to define biohacking for those of you that don't know. Biohacking is using natural techniques to regain our vibrancy, vitality, and youthful vigor, and to reverse biological aging. But we don't usually talk about it when it comes to our neurology and our energy. Yet our neurology and our energy, our dopamine, is in a major addiction now and is being depleted to levels that are chronically low in men and some for women, is actually, as well as our chi sexual energy, those are the two most potent biohacks on the face of the planet, more powerful than all the pharmaceutical ED drugs put together and all the superfoods put together. And it's what launches us into neurological, into sexual, relational, physical potency. So we just don't talk about that enough, but we really should. That's where I like to be the most clear with people, is that the power of our neurology and our energy is what we're not honoring and cultivating, and we should. And that's what God wants us to do.
Mm-hmm. So it's that chi life force energy. It's that Eastern medicine is all about it. Like, acupuncture is about moving the chi energy. Did you do any of the acupuncture with that? Because I know it can help treat. I used to go for the imbalances. Like I used to go for emotional, like just to like had a traumatic breakup. I just did a lot of emotional healing with acupuncture, and it helped really to move that energy around. I know it can help like muscles and all that stuff too, but that's one modality that is good for moving the chi energy. What are some of the modalities for moving this energy throughout your body?
Well, there's so
activating
many myths. There's so many myths, and acupuncture really is great. I did that, but we tend to focus on things that have nothing to do with the real issue, the real source of ED today. And that's really on purpose. That's Western medicine. So I have identified 3 different forms of ED, and I want to totally demystify this and show people how simple and easy this all is. But the first one is porn-induced erectile dysfunction. This is the fastest growing segment of ED. It's a predominant form of ED. And, we're really at the end of a 2-decade-long massive experiment on the minds and neurology of the global population. And now we're seeing the results. The results are terrifying. They're harrowing. We're seeing an entire generation of young men who are virgins, unable to have the first sexual experience of their lives in any meaningful relationship. And this is real. I know men that have gone through this. My coach, Noah Church, who's now a leader in this movement, went through this. And many hundreds of thousands, possibly millions, are going through this right now. We don't talk about it, but this is what's happening. Pornography is destroying neurology, relationships, and leaving men impotent. Okay, that's what's happening. The second form of ED I see today is what I call energetic ED. This is from releasing our semen too often, and this depletes our chi sexual energy. It causes sexual fatigue, and when we're unable to perform well sexually. Men in their addiction, they always rationalize away these two forms of ED and the solutions for it. And they think these are like fringe behavioral suggestions, but we need to be really real and clear here that these two forms of ED, which is porn-induced erectile dysfunction, is neurologically based, and then energetic dysfunction through our practices that we've been taught in the West, are actually 2 major forms of ED we see today. I believe they are predominant, and this is happening on a massive scale. And Western medicine wants to diverge us away from this and think that we're disempowered, when actually we're fully empowered. Not only are we fully empowered with these 2 first forms of ED that I identified, we are the only power capable of resolving this. We can, even if we want to give away our power to the pharmaceutical industry or Western medicine, some doctor in a coat, they cannot resolve that. It's up to each individual in their hearts to make that, to find that drive and determination to resolve this themselves, to quit pornography and semen release, and to wake up to the fact that this is real. This is what's causing the ED, and the solution, which is simple, easy, and free, which is to refrain from pornography and semen release, are actually tried and true solutions that have been practiced for millennia in the East. The third form of ED that I've identified is what we're all familiar with. It's organic ED. It's like physical body ED. And we're all hyper-focused on this and brainwashed and trained to go to this every time. Even when I talk about the first two forms of ED, we still go to organic ED every time. And that's on purpose, because Western medicine and the pharmaceutical industry, they want us to be afraid. They want to make us have fear. And then they want to have the solution, which is, again, the only tool they have is this, what they luckily chanced upon by chance, was that some scientists discovered Viagra. And, they think that's going to resolve everything. But we need to be clear, a pill never replaces true healing, and they are not curing anything. In fact, even the natural supplement industry for ED is mimicking the same pathways that the pharmaceutical ED drugs use, which is boosting nitric oxide production artificially. But they're not actually getting to the root source. And I may be the only one that I'm aware of right now that's offering solutions that are simple and easy for all major forms of ED. The neurological, energetic, which are simple and easy and free, but also organic. I don't know anyone that's offering solutions for, there's different types of organic, which we won't go too far into depth today because we want to focus more on relationships, but it's really amazing. I basically found a way to resolve, there's hormonal, which is one, and women and men share the same exact solutions for it, which is bioidentical pellet testosterone replacement therapy. And it has enormous benefits for women, which reduces breast cancer, even existing breast cancer tumors, and also all menopausal symptoms. And they get all the same benefits, burning fat, building lean muscle mass, and improved sex drive. Women and men share so many similar traits. And, we have the same cardiovascular system. But when we come to cardiovascular, that's what Western medicine, pharmaceutical industry are saying, it's all blood flow. It's all blood flow. That's not true. It's not all blood flow. In fact, predominantly today, it's not blood flow. We're seeing, again, the fastest rise in ED is neurological. And we'll be getting into that, what neurology is, but we don't talk about that. We depend on our neurology to get an erection, to get aroused for women, to get an erection for men, and to maintain that during sex. We must have a healthy neurology in order to make love. And Western medicine doesn't talk about that. They'll never talk about it. So anyways, what I did is I asked the question, and I'll talk briefly about it, and then we'll segue into porn-induced erectile dysfunction. But what I did is I asked the simple question, okay, if we're spending all this energy and resources to enrich pharmaceutical industry and Western medicine by boosting nitric oxide artificially out above what we're capable of producing within, making us dependent on this form of medicine, and it's not even really medicine in my mind. Every time I want to have sex, I ask the question, how can we produce this naturally from within, intelligently from within, so that we can create nitric oxide whenever and wherever we want to, so that we're not dependent on this mechanical, awkward, uncomfortable process of reaching for a pill and being dependent on that every time we want to get aroused and have sex. It's just so mechanical. How can we get out of that cycle? And I found the solutions. The solutions are basically looking at the source, which is free radical damage to our endothelial system. And again, this is for women too. This is not just men. You need to realize this, but women can benefit in arousal from these techniques too. It's identifying the source. It's free radical damage. So it's sort of a two-pronged approach. It's getting rid of the free radicals that are causing arteriosclerosis, because arteriosclerosis is not actually the real problem. Our liver produces increasing levels of cholesterol whenever there's free radical damage taking place in our endothelial system. And this cholesterol goes out of the liver in the form of LDL cholesterol, which is high in wonderful antioxidant, antiviral, anti-inflammatory, and anti-cancer properties. And it deactivates the free radicals, and then it returns to the liver in the form of HDL. There's no bad cholesterol and good cholesterol. The statin industry, which is the richest on earth, wants you to think that there's bad and good. And they're actually essentially blocking us from producing the cholesterol. And now the science is showing increased fatalities in elderly from statins with cardiovascular events and cancer. But so arteriosclerosis is made up of a conglomeration of plaque, calcification, and heavy metals. And so without going into too much detail, basically through calcium EDTA, which is a chelation IV therapy, and Plaque-X IV therapy, which is a soy-derived phosphatidylcholine, we're able to actually remove the arteriosclerosis. I've actually done it myself. I had mild arteriosclerosis. I did an ultrasound before and after, and I removed it. And there's tons of scientific, even government, extensive scientific studies showing the effectiveness of this. Of course, Western medicine does not want you to know this because the statin industry is extremely powerful and wealthy, and they actively try and block it, which is why you should support your naturopath and these therapies. We need to demand it. And I recommend doing IVs with a naturopath rather than an IV room because it's safer. The protocols are safer, and sanitation and osmolarity. But the second part is then changing our lifestyle, mainly our diet, to a plant-based diet, but not just any old plant-based diet, but an intelligent one, that where we are using whole organic fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and whole grains, and little to no, ideally no processed flours and processed foods and sugars. We have to watch sugars and also soft drinks. And, basically we could be junk food vegans easily. So that's why this is very important. The science shows that for sexual health and overall physical health, these are completely inextricable. Our arteriosclerosis is blood flow restrictive ED. It's the same thing. It shows us how the physical body and our sexual health are completely inseparable. In fact, our sexual health is just a result of increased energy and vitality in our physical body. And that in turn causes healthy sex drive. In fact, with the hormone replacement therapy with testosterone, it's not that Western medicine there's this myth that we take a pill or we take something and it just makes our sexual area strong. That's not how it works. With hormone therapy, it makes it with testosterone. I don't recommend estrogen therapy for men or women. For women, mainly, I don't recommend it. But what it does is it increases our physical energy, and then in turn, that increases our sexual energy. That's how that works.
The testosterone.
Okay. And women actually make 20 times more testosterone than estrogen. They have that in their body, and they make all their estrogen from their testosterone. And so there's really no need to take estrogen. A lot of the old studies showed that discouraged women and I was so excited to discover this in my journey and my research, was that women actually simply all they need to do is take the testosterone pellet replacement therapy, and they can produce estrogen naturally from within from that. But the synthetic estrogen in those old studies is what discouraged women from hormone replacement therapy, which was totally wrong. We need to be talking about the reality, the science of how we can all regain health and vitality. And so women have been denied from this because of a faulty old study, another myth. That's why I say we need to get rid of the myths and the misconceptions. We have to look at the science. And my book absolutely is backed up by the science. It's got 111 scientific studies to back it all up. Scientists that are raising the alarm bells and the red flags and trying to enlighten us. But Western medicine, the pharmaceutical industry keeps us in the dark. And that's also because we allow them to. We are allowing them whenever we give credence to a person that has a white coat and a label on it, a name on it, we're giving our power away to them, when we need to start looking out for ourselves, because they are not. They are making us ill. They're killing us. They're creating dysfunction, disease. Their life, they never talk about lifestyle changes because that doesn't provide, they don't want to provide solutions. They only provide two elements, which is pharmaceuticals and surgeries. That's it. You will not get any actual holistic, curative, and preventative healing modalities at all. Any solutions, any looking at the core causes, the real reasons. They will not allow you to do that. They don't even want you to do it. They want to block you from doing that. So we have to take it upon ourselves and completely throw out everything that we've heard and start anew. And that's what I encourage people to do. And what your podcast is about is, awakening our heart fresh and new, and starting on a new journey with a fresh mind, strip ourselves bare and, challenge ourselves. Like, we just don't challenge ourselves enough today. We're so used to getting everything handed to us, provided to us at our fingertips. And we don't realize that sacrifice and challenge, letting go of these addictions, letting go of the fears, letting go of these habits is where we actually gain vibrancy and vitality. Letting go of our blood. I mean, donating blood once a year even reduces the chance of heart attack by 88%.
Wow.
And why isn't Western medicine talking about that? Because they don't want a solution. They want to keep people on statins, on surgeries. And they don't want people to know about chelation IV therapy, about how effective that is, Plaque X IV therapy. They want to get rid of that because it's a threat. So anyways, I went way more into organic ED than I planned.
Well, I think it's so, what you're saying here is so relevant, because I think so many of us, myself included, over the last 2 years with this, what's been thrown in our face. And it would have been a great time for 2 years to talk about vitamin D and getting sunshine on your, what we can do to make our immune systems healthy. What can we make ourselves stronger, and how can we unify and get through this together? But it was all about division. It was about masking. It's about sanity, like none of it. And we've seen all these people that are talking out against it, how they're being censored, and they're not allowed to talk about, all these, there are therapies that worked at inexpensive therapies, and they were vilified and censored and losing their jobs. I mean, it's so apparent that the FDA is a farce. CDC is a joke. I don't trust hospitals. A lot of us don't anymore. And we have so much power within ourselves to heal ourselves. Like you say, with God or the universe, with faith in something, higher than ourselves. And ourselves, we're our own heroes. We're the ones that are going to save ourselves. Nobody else is going to save us. Medical industry is just making money off us. They want to keep us sick. So the more people that awaken to the truth are going to be able to, like yourself, heal themselves or find other ways.
Well, that's a problem. We need to realize we're living in a corporatocracy, and that big pharma is one of the biggest players in that corporatocracy. And it's just a chain of power that's political also. And we really have witnessed one of the most ingenious, mental heists that I've witnessed in my lifetime. But anyways, I don't like to focus so much on organic ED again, because we should view this more as a way to, some people have organic ED. Yes. They have blood flow issues. They have hormonal issues. That's great. We can resolve that. And this is really, we should look at it more as a way to increase our sexual performance rather than this scarlet letter that they vilify, that they terrify us with in Western medicine, that men are terrified into submission with right now, that they won't even talk about it because they don't have a solution. So that's why I'm providing the solutions, so we can focus on the real solutions rather than, what they're saying, oh, well, it's blood flow. And then it's also psychological. It's because you're unable to get an erection. So that creates a cycle. No, that's not what creates the cycle. The cycle is created because you're not providing real solutions. Mm-hmm. And I am. So I'm providing real solutions. And it's kind of amazing that an organic farmer who 3 years ago wasn't sure how to eat, if I'd even have a vibrant sexual function again, is now been through the grace of God, now has these solutions available to everyone to realize are here. There's really no place for ED and cardiovascular disease today. We have the tools, it's out there. And that's why on this podcast, we're getting this information out. Mm-hmm. But I like to focus more on like the real solution. We need to start with the core where we must start, because even if we resolve, or which they don't do, but if let's say they luck out and they identify someone that has organic blood flow ED, and they just happen to get someone that has that. Okay. Well, if you don't resolve the porn-induced ED and the energetic source of ED from semen release too much, then you're not going to resolve the ED. So that's why we have to look at everything holistically. This is holistic. And they don't have any idea what to do right now with the fastest growing segment of ED today, porn-induced erectile dysfunction and semen release. These are all behaviors we've been brainwashed. Men have been trained to believe that in the West, this is how we act. In the East, they're well aware of the power of our sexual choices, our behavioral choices. But porn-induced erectile dysfunction, it's a neurologically based form of ED, and it is an arousal displacement dysfunction, is what I call it. This means that for me, what I had was I was able to get aroused to my favorite pornography, but not to a real live connected partner in front of me. I started noticing I couldn't. And that's the arousal displacement. That's a desensitization process, which is an escalating addiction that causes eventually, for so many hundreds of thousands of men, even millions, eventually can get to the point where they very commonly cannot get aroused to their favorite pornography. I luckily caught it before it got to that point, but when you get to the point where you cannot even get aroused to your favorite pornography, you have become impotent to life itself. Your dopamine is so crashed that you cannot get aroused to life, to a partner, and even pornography. And this truly is a dopamine addiction. The science has shown that dopamine levels and receptors in porn users is depleted to the same chronically low levels experienced by cocaine and morphine addicts. In fact, the brain cannot even differentiate between a physical addiction to a drug and a neurological addiction to the superstimulus of pornography. Pornography is a superstimulus for two main reasons. It combines two main elements that are important to understand. The first is the novelty. It's the constant novelty at our fingertips. It's endless, that we can select for each individual's neurological arousal pathways. Combined with the second element, and this is important, it's semen release. That's what makes it a super stimulus, combining those two elements. So I use the term semen release rather than ejaculation on purpose. In Tantra, we practice regularly what is called full body orgasm ejaculation without semen release. This is where the entire body, including the lingam, has an orgasm and ejaculates. It shakes in ecstasy, but we're simply blocking the semen from being released because it's like liquid gold, and I'll be getting into this next. But in the East, they've been aware for millennia. It's just in the West that we're naive of the immense toll that semen release takes on a male. The moment that semen is released, and a male will undergo an intense mental, neurological, and physical refractory period and a process of replenishment in which dopamine levels crash and prolactin levels rise. Prolactin is linked with fatigue and with even hair loss. And the body goes through a process of pulling all the most precious resources of growth factors, hormones, and nutrients to replace the vital sperm. And so this all causes fatigue, mood imbalance, and distancing. It's most intense solidly for the first 3 days, but science shows that it actually weaves up and down this process of fatigue, all this mood imbalance, the refractory period, the dopamine crashes, prolactin rising, weaves up and down for up to 2 weeks.
Wow.
So some of the largest reverberations are happening at the 2-week level. Now,
after one? After
just one. And so
wow,
that's where we need to realize the reality is that I can tell you from my own experience, when I was watching pornography, I was releasing my semen, and I have talked to all men who verify the same thing, not just once every 2 weeks, not even usually once every few days. It's usually once a day, sometimes even more. And so what this means is that on a massive scale, because almost all men are engaging in pornography today. Most men, 8 out of 10, 8 billion out of 10 billion. We don't have that many on the planet, but you get the gist.
Yeah, that's a lot of them.
8 out of 10 on a massive level are experiencing overlapping dopamine crashes and entering a perpetual state of chronic fatigue, mood imbalance, anger, irritability, and a total inability to connect in the relationship. We would never think twice about someone who's a cocaine or morphine addict. We wouldn't be surprised at all we wouldn't expect them at all to be able to be at peak sexual performance, to be fully connected in their relationship, fully available emotionally and mentally, communicatively, to be at their peak physical conditioning. We wouldn't expect that with a cocaine or morphine addict, would we? Mm-mm. Yet we don't realize this is exactly the same effect, the same addiction, the same depleting effects they're happening on a massive level culturally, globally right now with men. And we don't realize we're essentially dealing with a majority of men in a cocaine or morphine addiction, if you will. And that's what's causing this relationship dysfunction. And I know I'm talking a lot, but I wanted to also talk about how fascinating the brain is. That the brain actually, even though men and women, when we are conscious that we're engaging in a fantasy, when we look at pornography and engage in pornography, every time we release our semen to these pornographic images, the brain actually believes this is real. The brain actually believes that we're waging a highly successful campaign of mating with a wide range of sexy novel mates. Mm. And this is the very definition of mating behavior, which we'll be getting into mating and bonding behaviors. But mating behavior is spreading maximum genetic diversity through novel mate selection. Now that sounds very archaic and reptilian to me. That really holds no place in a modern relationship. Yet men are perfecting and practicing these mating behaviors to toxic levels, toxic behaviors. Women's fears are absolutely backed by the science. Their intuition is absolutely correct. Men are absolutely totally unavailable for relationship because they're in a massive addiction. They are replacing real connective partners literally on every level, neurologically, mentally, physically, emotionally, sexually, with pixels on a screen, with a fantasy. They are pixel by pixel replacing real connected partners with a fantasy, which ultimately leaves them completely empty. And anyways, I want to talk about semen retention and semen release next, but that sort of is what I wanted to really get you to understand about porn-induced erectile dysfunction and how powerful it is.
So that recovery period where you were saying it could take 3 days or even a week, that is just from watching pornography and that kind of release? Or is it when you're in a sexual act, it could take that long to recover? Like when you're actually in a sexual act with
that's
the person?
Why these are their own forms of ED, and what I'm going to talk about next is how they impact relationships too. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously both of them impact relationships, pornography and semen release. This mating, and what's happening is men are actually taking these toxic mating behaviors that they're practicing and perfecting, and they're transposing that into the relationship. And so, this semen release actually becomes a mating behavior in the relationship where men are increasingly focused on the singular goal-driven act of climactic-driven semen release. And this creates distancing and satiety in the relationship where this mammalian brain, this archaic brain, we also have bonding behaviors to help with this, but this mammalian brain actually believes it's been successful at procreating with one partner and is now subconsciously looking at new novel partners in order to spread that maximum genetic diversity. And again, this is unconscious, this is subconscious. These unconscious behaviors that men are reacting to, that they've been brainwashed to, is what's creating massive dysfunction. We need to get conscious of it. And that's kind of what I want to talk about next is semen retention and semen release. So again, semen retention, semen release is the second major form of ED we see today. It's not just a suggestion. This is a major epidemic. And nothing brings up more fear in men than when I use the word semen retention and semen release. It's because men believe that they'll lose the satisfaction they're getting from releasing their semen, when actually through their pornography and addiction and their semen release addiction, they're actually getting to the point where they're pushing themselves further and further away from the true reality that they think they're in. They're actually, by depleting their dopamine drive and determination, their, all the qualities that come from semen retention, from, their magnetism, their mental acuity, their emotional balance, their ability to communicate and connect and to perform sexually. They're actually repelling women. They're actually doing the opposite of what they think they're doing. And then they're actually getting less satisfaction sexually. They think they're getting satisfaction, but they're getting less and less. So it's actually a total paradox. Semen retention is a paradox because as the chi sexual energy and the dopamine levels return, and the chi sexual energy returns to the sexual parts of our body, we experience increased sensitivity, increased satisfaction, increased sexual performance and potency and prolongment. Where again, men are unconsciously releasing their semen after the average of 3 to 5 minutes. This is leaving women wholly unsatisfied and actually perturbed and distancing in the relationship. Mm-hmm. So we can actually prolong it now to where, 30, 50 minutes rather than 3 to 5 minutes.
Wow.
That's not important. What's important is it's whatever is in alignment with your partner. Now, women, as you know, I'm not going to lecture women, but I'm really talking to men here, that we need to wake up, that women are just getting aroused at the moment that you're finished and distancing, actually pulling away. You're not just finished, you're actually pulling away, leaving them completely isolated and unsatisfied. Mm-hmm. Now we can get in alignment and we can slow it down, smell the flowers, and experience fuller embodiment, deeper connection, and start seeing this as a dance, that brings us closer to God rather than a singular goal-driven act of not just sex, but even just semen release is the only goal, and climax is the only goal. Even men need to get to the point where they're not addicted to just sex, where if sex happens, great. If it doesn't happen, I had to go through a process of, getting used to being totally fine with that and taking that energy that we're so not used to knowing what to deal with, this excess, beautiful energy that comes from our sexual, physical potency, our chi energy, and transmuting that into the relationship, into deeper connection, bonding behaviors, but also your passions in life, success, as they do in the East, But the most important benefit of semen retention of all is avoiding the dopamine crash, avoiding the distancing, mood imbalance, fatigue, avoiding, all these aspects that are incredibly poisonous. They undermine and ultimately destroy even the best matched, well-intentioned partners. So we'll get to next. We'll get to, how we can, what the hope is, how we can transmute this into Tao, Tantra, Karetsa practices and bonding behaviors versus mating behaviors. Mm-hmm. What are the tools that we can employ?
So the dopamine crash happens because they're just so like you said, they're, used to like masturbating to porn and just getting to that ejaculate state. So when they're having sex with a woman, it's that climax that they're trying to reach so fast, instead of like bonding with the woman and actually being in the act of being with the woman. It's like, I know I've had partners in the past where it's like, they weren't partners for long, where it's just like, you're starting to finally get aroused and then they're done, or like, oh, can you come? Like, well, no, you're not doing anything for me. It's like, I've had, people that are just, it's all about them and just nothing for the woman.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Gary Wilson, he passed away last year. He's a pioneer. He's the foundation of the anti-porn movement, the porn awareness movement. He wrote Your Brain on Porn. He showed the neurology behind pornography addiction. Marnia, his wife, who I'm friends with, who wrote the review for my book, she actually looked at the neurology of relationships. And, she talks about how the dopamine crash that happens for men, I believe, is, the science shows, but I believe it's much more profound for men than women. But the dopamine crash happens because they release their semen. And at that point, as I said, at that very point of semen release, this profound change happens on a neurological, mental, physical level, sexual level. There's a shutdown that happens for men because they're releasing their vital essence too often. And, so some men talk about, well, how can we, it's kind of an attachment. Like, how can we release our semen some of the time? Do we have to never? Can we ever release our semen again? It's like, yeah, you can. Sure. You can do whatever you want. It's a free country, right? Obviously, what's happening on an epidemic level, but there's no reason to. Health-wise, it's extremely healthy on all levels. And that's what I actually, and before I get into it, but I want to, again, talk about, I think there's a difference with women. I believe there's not that same effect. They're not releasing massive amounts of essential nutrients and growth factors and hormones, going through this major dopamine crash that's happening. It's just a different effect on this one area. I think the other areas of our bodies are so exactly alike. It's just this one area is a profound difference. And so I actually believe that orgasm for women can be incredibly powerful. The onus is really on men. Men are not, they have a relational dysfunction taking place on every level, neurologically, spiritually, mentally, relationally. That's where we need to look. And when men can bring that to the relationship, then women's orgasms can deepen that connection. Mm-hmm. That's my belief. I differ a bit with Marnie on that one element. I love her to death, but I think it's important that we look at what, keep looking at things. I do think I do recommend women look at the effect that keep an eye on their neurology, see if there's any, satiety and distancing that happens, but also just, if anything, be aware of how orgasms can deepen, when and where they can deepen the relationship. What's their role? How does that affect you? We should always be aware of how our behaviors affect us, but I don't think it has anything to the same effect as it has for men. The one thing I learned, and this is getting into the next section about Tao, Tantra, Karetsa, mating and bonding behaviors.
Learn more about that and much, much more on the next episode of the Awaken Heart Podcast. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Awaken Heart Podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, share it with a friend. And if you haven't already, head on over to your favorite podcast app to subscribe, rate, and review. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, you can reach me at theawakenheartpodcast.com.